chapter is on what? The death of his mother and his guardianship, who was taking care of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Sheikh said, "Wufiyat ummuhu," his mother died, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wa huwa fi as-sadisati min umri, while he was 6 years old. Subhanallah. His mother died while he was how old? 6 years old. Some narration mention 5. Some narration mention 4. But the one that is most authentic, Wallahu ta'ala alam, is that one that mentions 6. So his mother died. Wa huwa fi as-sadisati min umrihi, while he was 6 years old. Wa hiya rajiyatun min al-Madinati. While she was returning back from Medina, she traveled to Medina. She went to visit her relatives. At the same time, she went to visit the grave of her husband, Abdullah bin Abdul Muttalib. She went to visit the grave of her husband, Abdullah bin Abdul Muttalib. If we note very well that when the father of the Prophet died, you know that he also traveled to where? To Medina. It was when he was returning back to Mecca that he died. I don't know if you remember. And he died at a place that is what now? Al-Ubwa. And even the place that the father died, it was still the same place that what? That the mother also died. Coincidentally. When the father was returning back from Medina, he died at a place that is known as Al-Abwa. It's between Mecca and Medina. Now, the Amina, the mother of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when the Prophet was around that 6 years old, she also traveled to where? To Medina as well. When she was returning back, she fell ill. She became sick at a place known as Al-Abwa. And that is where she passed away. That is where she passed. And that is where she was buried. She was buried at where? Al-Abwa. But his father, when he was returning back from Medina, he also died at that Al-Abwa. But he was returned back to where? To Mecca to be buried. Now, let's continue. So, وَهِيَ رَاجِعَةٌ مِنَ الْمَدِينَةِ, and she was returning back from where now? From Medina. وَقَدْ ذَهَبَتْ إِلَى الْمَدِينَةِ. He said she has gone to Medina. She went to Medina لِزِيَارَةِ قَبْرِ أَبِيهِ, to visit the grave of the Prophet father, Abdullah. She took the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with her to visit the grave of the Prophet father, that is her husband. Wama'aha, and with her, Jadduhu Abdul Muttalib was who? Was the Prophet grandfather. So the Prophet grandfather, he was the one that escorted her or took her while she was carrying the Prophet. I don't know if you understand. The Prophet couldn't have gone to visit the grave of his father at the age of 6 years now. So definitely he was taken by his mother. Now we said she was accompanied by who? By Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather. You see that right from early time, the Arabian, they have close family relationship, and their ties of kinship was very strong. And you see, it's something that is missing in this our own time. Imagine Amina, she was interested in letting the Prophet know his father, to the extent that she took him to Medina to go and visit the grave of his father, Abdullah. So she has been educating him. And that is how the Arabs, that is how they were. They pay much attention. And look at the close bond between Abdul Muttalib, the Prophet grandfather, and the Prophet mother. Let's compare it to what is happening nowadays. Nowadays, there's a lot of gap in the family relation, to the extent that many of us, we do not even really know our fathers very well, talk less of knowing their history, or our mother, or talk less of knowing where they were buried or whatever. So during the Arabian time, then they see it as normal that they should go and visit the grave of what? Of their parents. They see it as normal something. So she went to Medina to visit the grave of the Prophet father, and with her was who? Abdul Muttalib. وَقَدْ دُفِنَتْ بِالْأَبْوَاهِ. So when she was returning, she died at Al-Abwa. A place between Medina and Mecca, and she was buried there. وَقَدْ دُفِنَتْ, and she was buried. Who was buried? Amina bint Wahab, the mother of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She was buried at Al-Abwa. Wahiya Qaryatun, and that Al-Abwa, Wahiya Qaryatun, is a city. Bayna Makkah wal Madina, between where? Makkah and where? And Medina. Fahadonatu Ayman. So when Amina died now, when she passed away, Fahadonatu Ayman. So Ayman, she took care of him. She was the custodian of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Fahadonatu Ayman. And who is this Ayman? Who is this Ayman? Hadimatu Abi Abdullah. She was the what? The slave of Abdullah. She was the slave of Abdullah, Ayman. She's a prominent figure in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Immediately the mother died at that age of 6. The person that was taking care of the Prophet was who? Ayman. And that Ayman was the free slave of who? Abdullah, the father of the Prophet. Ayman, she was the free slave of the father of the Prophet. So because the father of the Prophet was nice and kind to her, so she was close to the household, even though she was freed. To the extent that when the Prophet when the Prophet mother passed away, she took charge of the Prophet. But shortly, not long after then, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was returned back to Abdul Muttalib, the Prophet grandfather. The Prophet grandfather was still alive. And the Prophet grandfather, we mentioned earlier, he was a prominent figure in the whole of Arabia. He was a prominent figure. Because if you study the tribe of Quraysh, there are many tribes in Makkah. There are many tribes. We have Huda, we have many of them, we have Quraysh. But Quraysh was from the most respected tribe in Makkah. Most respected tribe. Now, the tribe of Quraysh now, it has many clans, many clans. And from the clan of under Quraysh, under the tribe of Quraysh, is what? Banu Hashim. Banu Hashim is the children of who? Hashim. From the children of Hashim is who? Abdul Muttalib. No, it's not Abdullah, it's Abdul Muttalib, the Prophet grandfather. So he was a prominent person, this Abdul Muttalib. And he was the one that, in fact, he was the leader. He was the leader of Banu Hashim. Abdul Muttalib, he was the leader of that clan. To show you how strong he was politically. But not only politically strong, he was also religiously strong, because he was also the one that is in charge of those that are coming for pilgrimage. He's the one that is to serve them. It's a great honor that you are the one that is serving those that are coming for pilgrimage all over Arabia. They used to come to Mecca, to Kaaba. So Abdul Muttalib was one that was in charge of here. That was the one that used to give the pilgrims. He will give them food, he will give them water, he will take care of their needs. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was later returned back to Abdul Muttalib. So Abdul Muttalib was more less like a king. I don't know if you are getting the scenario. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abdul Muttalib now loved him so much. In fact, in some narration, they said Abdul Muttalib, when he goes to the Kaaba, you know that he was in charge. When he goes to the Kaaba, he will take Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he will take him along. And he said he doesn't want to take any of his children along. He will take him along. And you go and sit with, you sit him down near the Kaaba, carpet, put him down. You stay. He loved the Prophet so much. The love of a grandfather to his what? To his grandchildren. But how long did it last? How long? 2 years. After 2 years, Abdul Muttalib passed away. The Prophet was returned back to Abu Talib. He was returned back to whom? Abu Talib. And he was with Abu Talib until he grew up. So that chapter now is on what now? Wafatu Ummihi, the death of his mother. The death of his mother. And his mother died at what age? When he was 6. What was the incident when she died? She went to travel to Medina for visiting a relative and to see the grave of her husband, of the Prophet's father. And when she was returning back, she did what? She passed away at a place called where? Al-Abwa. And she was buried there. She was what? Buried there. So when she was buried there, Ayman, who is Ayman? The free slave of who? Abdullah, the free slave of Abdullah. So Ayman now took the Prophet and she was taking care of him. But was it for a long time? No. The Prophet was returned back to who? Abdul Muttalib, his grandfather. For how long? Almost like 2 years. Then before he was returned back to where? To Abu Talib. So if you look at the background of all these events, it made the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be whom he was. It made him humble. He has a very humble background. And at a very early age, the scholar said what we can learn is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is easy to prepare the Prophet to be a great leader. Because of that humble beginning that he had, it made him to have compassion for others. He was caring. He was also humble.